Hey guys, it is Michelle, and today I am here with a physical book haul. Some of these books came from bookoutlet.com, some came from a Scholastic order I made through the school that I work at, and some are ones that I have picked up either at local bookstores or I ordered online from bookstores. First up is The Summer Without Men by Siri Husfett. I keep hearing Karina E. talk about this author, and when I saw one of her books on Book Outlet, I decided to pick it up. This is one that I believe Karina said would be a good one to start with, and I think she has a kind of a feminist flair to her writing. This is about a woman who has been married for quite some time, and her husband wants to take a pause in their marriage, and this has really taken her by surprise, and she's really having to adjust to that idea. Next book is by Jody Casella. This is Thin Space. It's about a young man who is a twin, and his twin is killed in a tragic accident, and he really misses his twin and keeps trying to find what he's calling a thin space, which is kind of like I don't know if it's a place or, I don't know, but somehow it's like blurs the line between the living and the dead. And then he meets a girl, and maybe she can change his mind about trying to find a thin space. Anyway, it sounds like it kind of deals with depression and that kind of thing. Next up, this is a kind of an odd one to explain. It's called The Character of Rain. It's by Amelie Nothomb, and apparently she is from France, but she grew up in Japan. And this is, now I've never heard this before, but it's probably true. In Japan, children are kind of revered until they turn 3 years old. They're kind of treated like gods. And so this is kind of her take on falling from godlike status after turning 3 and moving away from Japan. So sounds like it could be interesting. This book I found out about on Kid Dirtbag's channel, and seemingly she and I wouldn't have much in common, but our book tastes are amazingly similar. The 39 Deaths of Adam Strand. Now, this dude has died 39 times, not because he's depressed or anything like that. It's because he's bored and he finds out he can't really die. He pops right back to life. So, sounds kind of interesting, and she really enjoyed it, so I'm pretty sure I will too. That's just how that works. Next up is The Humans by Matt Haig. This is about an alien race that watches humans, and when anyone makes a mathematical discovery that they feel puts them in jeopardy, they send one of their aliens to embody the discoverer's human body and takes over their life so that that discovery is never leaked. And in this case, the alien falls in love with being a human and his wife and the kid and that kind of thing. So sounds like it could be interesting. Next is Forgive Me, Leonard Peacock by Matthew Quick. I have never read anything by Matthew Quick, and I know that there is a mental health readathon coming up in May, and so I am highly considering reading this. It's about a young man who decides he is going to go to school one day, kill his former best friend, and then himself. So, sounds like it could be interesting. Next is The Red Knight, which is the first in a fantasy series by Miles Cameron. And apparently you have these kind of guards that guard this wall. They get paid very well, and apparently there's hardly ever much action, but then all of a sudden there is some action, and it involves slaying dragons. So, I did not realize how large this book is, and that font is rather tiny. So, this one will be quite the investment of time when I do finally get around to reading it. It's going to have to be summer, more than likely. And then we have by Abigail Haas, Dangerous Girls. There is kind of a, I don't know how related it is, but she has another book called Dangerous Boys, and these keep showing up in my Goodreads recommendations, and I keep wanting to read Dangerous Boys, but the reviews for it always mention Dangerous Girls, so I thought I would start there and see if I like this one. But apparently there are some young women who go to Aruba on a vacation, and one of them ends up being murdered, and another one of them is accused of that murder, and she's, of course, out of her normal country and that kind of thing. So, sounds like it could be suspenseful and interesting. Next is Trouble by Non Pratt. For whatever reason, there is no Kindle version of this book, but it's been on my wish list for some time, so I was excited to see it on bookoutlet.com. It's about a young lady who is pregnant, and the father of the baby is not in the picture. She could really use a friend for what she's going through. And then there's a guy who has newly moved into their high school, And he, of course, could really use a friend. And so they end up befriending each other. And who knows where it'll go, but hopefully it'll be kind of cute and touching. And then lastly from bookoutlet.com is Why We Broke Up by Daniel Handler. And I really wanted a physical copy of this book because at the beginning of each chapter, there is an illustration of an item that was involved in the relationship / breakup. And I just didn't feel like reading it on my Kindle would do it justice. And I think this one's being made into a movie. I don't know. I think I saw that on Pinterest in passing the other day. All right, the next set of books came from Scholastic Book Club order at school. First, I ordered Threatened by Elliot Schrefer. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. He has another book called Endangered. I've looked at them both at Barnes & Noble several times, but just didn't want to pay the hardback price. And finally, Scholastic had a paperback version of this one. This one is about Luke. He is an orphan in Africa. He is barely scraping by. He meets a professor who is going to study the chimpanzees, which he has always called the mock men. And so he joins the professor, and the story goes from there. I think he actually ends up feeling more family with the chimpanzees than anybody else. All right, then there is Bud Not Buddy, of course, set in 1936 Flint, Michigan, and times are hard, and he's a motherless boy. A lot of the kids read this as part of book clubs at school every year, and so I thought I need to read it so that I can discuss it with them once they have finished it. Same situation with the next book, Words in the Dust by Trent Reedy, and this is about a young woman in Afghanistan dealing with the Taliban and the effects that they have. Next up is Sophias War by Avi. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. I've seen tons of books by this author. Never read one. So this one is set in the Revolutionary War. Sounds pretty interesting. And by Robin Talley, we have Lies We Tell Ourselves. This deals with the schools being integrated in the South. I believe this one's set in Virginia, if I remember correctly, and it's about the first African-American young lady who comes into a formerly all-white school, and it is about a girl whose father is the most vocal opponent of the integration, and of course they are on a project at school together, and so I have a feeling some barriers are going to get broken down in the course of that book. Then we have Graceful Grayson by Amy Polanski, and this is about a young man who is a girl on the inside, and so it deals with gender identity. Should be good. And Upside Down in the Middle of Nowhere by Julie T. Lamana, not sure how to pronounce that. This is about a young girl who is very much looking forward to her 10th birthday. She lives in New Orleans, but then Hurricane Katrina hits and her life is forever changed. So then I picked up at, actually online from Barnes & Noble, Chew Volume 3, Just Desserts, and really loving this graphic novel series. Have loved the first two and given them 5 stars. Looking forward to getting to number 3. Also from online, I ordered Story Thieves. This is one of my most anticipated books of 2015. It is middle grade, which is rare to make it to my anticipated list for middle grade. But the young man catches the young woman coming out of a book in the library, and it turns out she's half fictional. Her father is a fictional character, and she's searching for him, and he catches her coming out of a book. He has a book series he dearly loves, and so in exchange for keeping her secret about being half fictional, she agrees to take him into his favorite book series, and who knows, maybe she'll find her father there. This was a cover / synopsis / first chapter by at a Barnes & Noble by Brooke Davis. It's Lost and Found. It's about a young lady at age of 7. She always wears red boots, which match her red hair, and she's abandoned in a department store. Somehow she ends up with an 82-year-old woman and an 87-year-old man, and it just seems like it could be a touching story. It seems something that would be right up my alley. I have put off starting this book because apparently there is a short story that she wrote about Carl the Touch Typist, who is the 87-year-old man in the book. And it's about when he escapes from like a retirement home, or at least abandons it, leaves it. And this book apparently explains why. And I've tried to find the short story and I've been unable to do so. So if you know how to find that short story, let me know. I believe it's called Carl the Touch Typist. I would dearly love to read that before I start this, but oh well, I have to start it sometime soon anyway. And lastly is another book that was recommended by Karina E. This is called The Known World. The very day I added it to my TBR after hearing about it from her, I saw it for $1 at the local used bookstore, so of course it came home with me. I did not know that there were actually black slave owners in the United States back in the times of slavery. So this is a story that kind of chronicles one of those scenarios. So I had no idea, and just sounds kind of interesting. All right, that's it for my physical book haul. Thank you so much for watching, and happy reading.